Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is Wednesday night, 9:30 p.m., Calgary, Alberta. It's May the 26th. I'm so happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention. It's up to us. It's a 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and I've got my chat room open. If anybody wants to come and sit in there, that's great. And we're going to continue talking about the Child Abuse Handbook. It's a free PDF download from Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. Their website, they offer this free PDF download for. They really want everyone to get a copy of this Child Abuse Handbook. It's compiled by best-selling author Donna Shear, who's also the president of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, and also co-authored and compiled by Sandra Potter, the CEO and founder of Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. So they want everyone to get a copy of this because the whole issue is if you read through it even once, you will have some good education on what the signs and symptoms are of child abuse, how to report child abuse, all the different types of child abuse, whether it's physical, verbal, emotional, psychological, and sexual, and you'll know how to sort of spot these signs and be a bit more aware, so that you can look out for the children in your own lives. And if you work with children, it's very important to know these signs and symptoms of abuse and to know how to report it. And there's all kinds of resources and links on this in this PDF handbook. And also, there's all kinds of information that people might not know, statistics regarding child abuse, worldwide statistics as well as nationwide. And so it's just really some good information. And I just wanted to cover it because the signs and symptoms that they've compiled here from all the different websites that they went and looked at and compiled this research is really one of the most sort of exhaustive and extensive sources that I have ever seen regarding the different types of abuse, whether it's physical, emotional, verbal, psychological. I'm on all kinds of websites all the time because I am an advocate to stand up for children, to fight for child rights, and to stop child abuse. So I'm always searching for material, searching for new material, and this is probably one of the best sources that I've seen yet. And before I was a volunteer with Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, I was on their website checking it out, and I was very happy to see this, and that this handbook is free for anybody who wants it, and I think everybody should have a copy and go through it at least once. It's very educational, very awesome and educational, so, my hats are off to those guys for doing this. And so, yeah, I'm just happy to be here. I'm not a professional. I don't hold any professional counseling certificates or anything like that. I'm just a person who pays to do my own blog talk show because I believe that we need to start talking about child abuse. And there's so many voices out there right now. And I'm so happy to see this. But we need everyone's voice involved. And so I just wanted to be one more voice, really. That's what came to mind when I started doing my blog talk shows. And back in November, I just wanted to be one more voice out there to join everybody else who's already out there to stand up and speak out against abuse of all kinds, really, but especially child abuse, because children cannot protect themselves, and they are our most vulnerable, group in society. They really need our protection. They need our help. And we all need to be responsible for this. It doesn't matter whether you have children or whether you were abused as a child. It has nothing to do with it. It's all about fixing what's wrong with this world. And children really are our future, and we have to start making some changes now. You know what I mean? We cannot wait. And not only that, at least 5 children a day will die at the hands of, or more, at the hands of their parents or caregivers. And so much abuse is not reported. It's underreported. So the statistics that are out there are really based on what is reported, and it's a really bad scenario when you start looking at the statistics of 1 in 3 or 4 girls, sort of standard across the board. 1 in 6 or 7 boys under the age of 18 will be abused in some way, whether it's sexually or physically, or it's just too many. 1 in 3 and 1 in 6. 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 6 boys. So if you're in a room with 3 girls, 3 women, one of you, chances are likely one of you will have been abused as a child sexually under the age of 18, and the same with men. 1 in 6. If you're in a room with 6 guys, probably chances are 1 out of the 6 or more will have been sexually abused in some way having unwanted sexual contact under the age of 18. So this is the whole issue, right? It's going on. It's happening. People can deny it all they want and pretend that it doesn't happen and stick their head in the sand and just want to have a nice life. Well, good for them. There's a lot of survivors out there. I'm one of them. And, there's a lot of us that we know it's happening, and we know it's happening all the time. Then there are others that stand up to fight for child rights who have not experienced child abuse, but they care, and my heart just is with them because they are making a difference for in a situation where they never experienced abuse, but they just want to help out. They want to make a change. And so I love those people, and I tell you, anybody who's standing up for child rights and standing up for children, is in my heart for sure. So that's why I'm doing this show, just to be one more voice, to get the information out, the education out, the awareness out, and, just to be one more voice out there. And so if you're a young person under the age of 18, I really ask that you have permission to listen to this show. I have no idea where the players are now. The Blog Talk players could be on any websites. And if you're listening and you're under the age of 18, or especially really young, there's a lot of adult content on here, and that's the reason I ask for young people to have permission to listen to the show. So if you don't have a parent who cares enough about what you're doing, you can have maybe a guidance counselor at school, or a teacher, or a coach, mentor, someone who you trust. They could listen to the show with you, or listen to an archive. And just make sure that it's something that you should be listening to. And because I fight for child rights, I will do this until the day I drop, to stand up for children, to stop child abuse of all kinds. And so I just hope that people will, young people will make sure that they keep themselves safe online. Internet safety is such a huge issue, and there's too many child sexual predators out there getting a hold of children and doing horrible things to them. And if they're not killed, they're going to spend a lifetime trying to get over the assault by a child sexual predator. And the FBI's website is great. I love that website, and I really recommend it to everybody to go check out the FBI's website on internet safety for parents and for children. And you can see, they have the statistics there of just how many child sexual predators are online at any given time. There are millions online at any given time, just waiting to get a hold of a vulnerable child who does not know how to keep themselves safe online. And so this is why I ask everyone who's under the age of 18 to make sure that you get help, and you let people know what you're doing online, and never give out any personal information, including your name or your telephone number or where you live. And don't call these people. You don't know who's on the other end. They could say, "Oh, I'm 14 and I love to motocross. Yeah, and I'm into heavy metal music and, all this stuff," and it turns out to be a child sexual predator, and, they get you to meet them somewhere after school, and you're thinking it's your 14-year-old buddy, and it turns out to be a child sexual predator, and kids are losing their lives to these people, and they're also being assaulted, and this is not funny, and you cannot keep yourself safe enough. Even with the information, you're still at risk, but because living in fear is no good. It just doesn't do anybody any good to live in fear. Best thing to do is get the education and get smart on how to keep yourself safe, right? So we'll get right on into this article. We left off on Monday night talking about statistics, because that's where I had started last week. I really wanted to look at some child abuse statistics, and so we were really going over that for the last few shows, and you can go back and catch those archives. It's really eye-opening to see really just how much abuse is actually going on worldwide, as well as nationwide within the United States and Canada. And it's just crazy, the amounts of children that are suffering on this planet right now. And this just goes on year after year after year. So we can all pretend and hide our heads in the sand and let this continue, or we can stand up and do something about it. And really all it takes is just people getting involved, getting the education, getting the awareness, and looking out for children in your own homes, in your own families, and the children in your lives, and make sure that they are not being abused, and report it if they are, and make sure that you get them some help, right? They are really counting on all of us to be there for them, right? So it's so important. This Child Abuse Handbook, free PDF download from Dreamcatchers for Abused Children at http://www.dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com, and you can get this PDF right off their site. And I wanted to look at signs of physical child abuse. It's the next portion of this handbook, and Signs of physical abuse, here they just list off and talk about the different signs, right? So unexplained bruises, self-destructive behaviors, welts, human bite marks, bald spots, unexplained burns, especially cigarette burns, unexplained fractures, injuries, or abrasions. If you see these on children, this is a really good sign of physical abuse. And how many a lot of times abusive parents will say, "Oh, well, my child she fell down." She fell down. How many times can your child fall down and gash their head, or have welts on their back, or on their legs? You really have to know, what to look for, right? It's so important because parents are going to lie, of course they are, and caregivers, right? They're not going to say, "Oh, well, I beat up my child the other day really badly," and they're not going to tell you that. They're going to say something like, "Oh, well, she fell down, or she fell off the swing, or she fell out of bed." That's a real common one. Things in the home, right? She slipped and fell in the bathroom, or what I mean, this kind of stuff, right? She hit her head. Quite often people will use those as excuses after they've beaten their child. So it's so important to know that this is really going on. Nervous, hyperactive, aggressive, disruptive, and destructive behaviors in the child. Unusually wary of physical contact. They don't want anybody to touch them, or they don't want anybody to get near them, right? Unduly frightened of parent or caretaker. I was like that because I'm a survivor of child abuse, and I didn't like anybody to touch me or to reach out to touch me because my mom was always reaching out to slap me. So whenever somebody would come out to touch me with their hands, I automatically would flinch, And even as an adult, I find myself doing that with people who I don't know that well, and if they come up to hug me and I'm not used to it, it kind of throws me off guard, and I will kind of back away, and that's just a learned response, right? It is still with me today. Expresses little or no emotion when hurt. Unduly shy, withdrawn, and passive. So these are some things. They can either be really aggressive children, who are being abused physically because they're modeling the behavior and taking on that behavior in the home, and destructive, right? Or they could go the other way and be really shy, withdrawn, introverted, right, and passive. They could go either way. So that's really something to keep your eye out for. You know what I mean? And especially if you've known a child for a long time, and they've been in your life for a long time, and then all of a sudden their behavior changes. That's really a sign that you should take a look at. Behavioral changes, because children just don't all of a sudden just change for no reason. They go on about life pretty happy-go-lucky until something happens to them. And if something horrible happens to them that could cause them to change the way that they behave, maybe they used to be fun-loving and they used to be interested in everything, and even small children, right, just learning and wanting to be, a part of everything. And then all of a sudden you see them 2 weeks later, and they're sitting in the corner. They don't want to talk to anybody. They're noticeably upset and quiet, and they're not saying anything. You can imagine that something probably happened, and who knows what. But that's the whole issue. You got to keep an eye out for the signs and symptoms so that you can spot abuse and then get that child some help, right? And then they go on to explain here in this PDF download. I really highly recommend everybody gets it. Signs of physical abuse, bruising, right? Bruising is the most common of abuse injuries. There are 4 factors to take into account when determining whether or not the bruising is suspicious: location, size, color, and frequency. And location, normal bruising can be found on the knees, shins, elbows, and the forehead. Toddlers are especially vulnerable to forehead bruising as they frequently bump into furniture, counters, anything that is at their head level. But the size of the bruise, the color, and the frequency in which bruising occurs can turn even normal bruising into suspicious bruising. Suspicious bruising can be found on the face, head, chest, back, arms, the genitals, thighs, back of the legs, and buttocks, right? Size. The size of the bruise can tell us what object or body part the child was struck with or harmed with. And that's also listed under beatings and choking for more details on size of bruising, right? Color. The color of the bruise, that can tell people a lot about whether it's a fresh bruise or if it's old. It'll take on like a red or purplish or black or blue appearance when it's first in its first stages, right? When it first appears, they said here, depending on the force of the blow. Then it starts to turn green. It says, as the bruise heals, it will turn green and then become jaundice yellow before fading away completely. Though it seems obvious, these changes in color, they're not always easy to see on everyone, right? And so this is the whole issue. And they could be bruises not, where you won't see them, right? So this is the whole issue. Children can be experiencing physical abuse, and no one would know it because the abusers know where to abuse the child so that no one will see it, see? And that's really sick and sad, but you know what? It's so true, and it's happening. Frequency. The more frequent the bruising incidents occur, the more likelihood of physical child abuse. The child may have a legitimate reason for the bruising, but if there are too many incidences, then the red flags of suspicion should go up. Yeah, like how many times can a child fall or, fall out of bed? That's what I like to think is we have to keep an eye on what parents are saying about things like that. If you actually were to question them on it and they kept coming up with the same answer, oh, she fell down or she did this, you know what I mean? It's like, well, okay. How much of that can possibly be going on? So it's really something to keep an eye open for. Signs of physical abuse, number 2, is beatings. The pattern of bruising and or abrasions will resemble the shape of the object or body part used. The most common are belts, sticks, bats, bottles, and fists, but children are frequently attacked with firearms and knives. If a belt is used, there will be red welts that are the width of the belt. There may also be bruising and or bleeding. The length of the welt depends on how much of the belt came in contact with the skin. And typically, caregivers who use a belt will strike the buttocks, the back, and the back of the legs. If a child is beaten with a fist, the shape of the bruise can be that of a whole fist, or the bruising can show up as a cluster of lines, the imprint of the fingers of the fist, right? If the knuckles are used, bruising will be a line of roundish discolorations that are somewhere between the size of a dime and a quarter, depending on the size of the fist. And caregivers who use their fists generally give blows to the face, head, and chest, and that's what my mother used to do. This is just horrible, and it does happen, and we know it happens, and it's happening all the time. That's what we have to stop it. Stomach and arm, and also to the stomach and arms. Injuries are often to the face and head. Black eyes, bloody and or broken nose, fat and split lips, swelling of the eyes, cheeks, or jaw, bruising and abrasions to the side of the head. Broken ribs and internal injuries can also result with severe blows to the chest and stomach. Children die every day because of severe blows to the chest and broken ribs and internal injuries, and absolutely horrible. There's no excuse for abuse. I absolutely, I say that almost on every single show that I'm talking about abuse, which is just about every single one. Well, I do. That's what I do. I talk about abuse, right? But the whole thing is, there's no excuse for people to treat their children like that. And if parents are having a hard time, or caregivers, we know life is really hard and stressful. Parents get to push to the end of their rope, and but to beat a child like that and to take your aggression out on a child like that is against the law, first of all, and second of all, it's just plain wrong. There's ways to not do that and not hurt your child. And parents, I can imagine. I know I was a child, and I was, parents are not perfect. Nobody's perfect, and they can lash out at their children. It's not a perfect world. Children can be a handful. And I want to say keep it polite here on the show, but children can push their parents, right to the very limit. And so, but the whole issue is there has to be better ways than causing severe damage to your child, whether it's and because physical damage, is just one part of it. There's the whole emotional, psychological damage that's done to the child because of the physical abuse. It sort of goes hand in hand. And so, and along with it generally comes some verbal abuse. And so then it's compounds, right? And so that's the whole issue. There's ways to handle it. It's better to step away, walk away from the child if you're going to lash out at your child, to step away and give yourself a timeout and let the child have a timeout, and then come back and talk about it, discuss it. And if your child is really too young to have a conversation and they're just a young kid, and you can still talk to them, but they might not understand what you're saying. But it's better than beating them to death. You know what I mean? That's what we see a lot of times in the paper nowadays. Parents who just beat their children to death, right? And this is absolutely horrible, absolutely horrible. I like to think that more people would get up and stand up and do something about it if they would put themselves in that child who's being beaten to death, in their shoes for about a couple of minutes, to think about what it would be like to be battered. I'm not sure if everybody knows what it would be like to be hit that hard, to where it's life-threatening. You know what I mean? And if you haven't experienced it, if you have never been physically attacked by anyone, then you wouldn't quite understand it. But if you have been physically attacked by someone, then you would know how horrible it is, especially when it's your parents and they're supposed to love you and care for you, and you know that they're just taking their anger and their own problems out on you. It's very hard on a child, and it's very discouraging, right? Because you want your parents to love you, and you know, and yet it causes this love-hate thing to happen because you hate what your parents are doing to you, but yet you want your parents to love you, and it can really cause a lot of problems with children if they survive the abuse, you know, to go on as adults and have a lot of problems later on. And so this is the whole issue, right? It's not a good idea to discipline your child by beating on them. There's a difference between discipline and abuse, and when it crosses the line, it's abuse, and when anything that harms a child is abuse. It's actually the actual definition of abuse is anything that actually harms a child. So, I mean, that's verbal, emotional, psychological, as well as sexual and physical, anything that harms a child. So, you know, if you're harming your child, you're abusing your child, and that's the whole issue. It's not discipline, it's abuse. So you have to be very careful about what you're doing when you're disciplining your children, right? It can soon turn in and lead to abuse, you know. And my parents were both brought up in abusive homes, so they did not have good examples on how to parent, and so they got together and then tried to be two parents who had a lot of problems because they were abused as children themselves, grew up in these horrible homes and with these strange situations, and then tried to be a couple with these problems compounding, you know what I mean? And so yeah, it can happen. It's the cycle of abuse, right? And they passed it right on down to us. And so absolutely horrible, and that's the whole issue, right? We have to stop this, and we have to do it now. We can't put it off and keep saying, oh, we'll let somebody else do it or whatever. You know, 3 years ago, I was sitting on the couch watching a program on TV, and it really bothered me because it was about a woman who was in a domestic violence situation who had her face smashed in by a gun, and this was in Afghanistan, right? I was just watching this program. I'm very much interested in the human rights and child rights, women's rights in Afghanistan. Because they have none, they can be killed at any time, and no one will say anything. People would probably clap and laugh because they're so confused and backwards. You know what I mean? And the people over there, you know, they don't want that. They don't like to be treated like that. But yet, how do they change a society that is so backwards, right? Well, my parents were like that. They were so backwards, you know. So I know what that woman that was laying on the ground with her face smashed in, I felt such compassion and pity for her, you know, because she was not going to have any hospitalization. There would be nobody to fix her face. She would go on with a broken jaw, probably die because of the injuries, right? And I thought, oh my God, here's this woman, she's probably in her 30s, having her husband smash her face in, and I thought back to my own family and my own parents and the way they treated each other. And my mother was, my dad was a very abusive man, and my mom was also a very abusive woman. So the two of them used to bash each other and batter each other quite a bit, and they were basically trying to destroy each other, and also were trying to destroy us in the meantime. And so I decided to get involved. I said, why am I sitting on the couch when this is bothering me so much? And yet I know what this is. I know what this is all about. And yet I'm going to sit on the couch and just let somebody else do it. You know what I mean? It's like, oh well, let somebody else handle it. And I thought, no, I don't like what I see, so I have to I have to be part of the change. And so that's why I got busy, and I started getting busy and getting involved. And then I ran into Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. Thanks to Sandra Dawn Potter for starting Dreamcatchers for Abused Children after she had a horrible tragedy happen in her own family with one of her children. You can see it on the website at http Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. And, you know, this is the whole thing, right? We have to all get involved to make these changes, right? So important, because kids are counting on us, right? There are children right now who are dying at the hands of their caregivers and parents, you know, or being abused right now and beaten to death and neglected, you know, and not loved, right? That's just as bad. I mean, it's all bad and it all hurts, right? There's no one, I can't think of one thing that's any worse than the other. I've pretty much been through it all. So the whole thing is bad. And so, you know, we have to do something to help these people and help these children, right? They're going to need our help in the future, and the children that are being abused today are definitely going to need us tomorrow. But we don't want any more to be abused. That's the whole issue. So I think everybody needs to get up and get off the couch and get involved one way or another, especially in your own communities, in your own homes, in your own lives, people in your own neighborhoods, you know, there's groups out there doing some awesome work. but it's just that not very many people want to get involved because abuse is such a touchy subject, because 1 out of 3 girls and 1 out of 6 boys will have been abused, which means almost all of us, a third of us have experienced abuse, and most people don't want to admit it. There's a lot of shame and stigma around it. I lived with it my whole life and was made to feel extremely bad about myself, and that I was not worth it, and that I wasn't worth anything. I should have been killed, and my mother was quite often saying that she should have killed me, or she should have killed the family or herself, or there's a lot of that talk going on, and I was sort of took that on myself as an adult, thinking, do I really belong here? And am I really worth anything, sort of thing, right? It's very hard on people, and so that's just the whole issue. So many people don't want to face what they've been through, and so they don't want to get involved to help stop child abuse. And that's their own prerogative. Everybody they have their own prerogatives. But I say, if anybody has it in them to get involved and fight for child rights and stand up for children, advocate for children against abuse, man, I'm telling you, jump in and get in here with us, because we need every single person we can get. And I'm so happy to stand with all these advocates out here. I've got so many advocate friends in Australia, the United States, in Canada as well. There's awesome groups up here doing some wonderful work, and all around the world, really, the UK. And so, I'm so happy to stand with all of these people, to be one more voice out there, just to say, hey, we have to stop child abuse, and we have to stop it for these children now, and for the children tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day. So this is the whole thing. So yeah, I would hope everybody would get involved and want to be a part of it, a part of the change, a part of the proactive change, because we can make these changes. It is going to take some work, that's for sure. It's not going to happen overnight. But as long as we are working towards the realization of the end, you know what I mean? Working towards the final goal of developing programs that actually work nationwide, to help children and to help parents who are having a hard time coping, to know that they can get help, and to help people who are suffering and have in domestic violence situations, or have substance abuse problems or whatever. But it is going to take all of us to do it, and so that's why I'm so happy to be able to do this show. And I really appreciate everybody who tunes in on a regular basis, and I thank you so much for sitting here listening to me, day after day after day after day. And I probably sound like a broken record, but I just sort of will keep it going for just in case I get someone listening who hasn't listened before. You know what I mean? Thank you so much, because you know what, you are a part of my life, and I appreciate it so much. Growing up abused and feeling very much that I did not deserve to be here, and that my life would never account for anything, and that I should just end it. And to go from that to where I'm at today is actually just awesome. And that's why I keep telling people, just keep hanging in there and keep reaching out and getting help, you know what I mean? Because we can do it, and it is very possible to move past the abuse and to move on to a full recovery. And I believe that 100%, because I'm seeing it in my own life. And whereas 3 years ago I was about ready to kill myself, and thinking that I should, and wanting to self-injure, and here I am today thinking that, hey, I want to go on, and I want to be a part of this change, and it gives me a reason to stay alive, and it gives me a reason to fight. And in the meantime, I'm learning how to love myself, because I have so many friends and people who've been so supportive. So that's what I mean. You are all part of my proactive change. So in other words, what I'm doing right now, you have done for me. And so I thank you so much from the bottom of my heart, because I really needed that, and you came into my life at a time when I really did need, that support. And that, that unconditional love that I really never received as a child, right? There was no love in our home, and so I didn't know anything about love until I met people who showed me love and showed me what real love is and what real friendship is, and what real life should be like, right? And so that's what we have to do for these children out here who are being abused right now, right? That's why it's so important to me to be a part of this, because these children out here do not know love, and all they know is pain, and they know misery, pain, and horror. And I know, I was there. And so that's the whole issue. It's a really bad scene, and I would love for these children, to be able to sit in my shoes someday and say the same exact things, you know what I mean? This to tell people to keep reaching out and keep getting that help where they can find it, right? So it's just a cycle, passing the cycle on back around of positive behaviors and positive stuff, right? So yeah, I'm so happy to be here. So we got about a minute left, and I thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you check out Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here on Blog Talk Radio. Tomorrow night is Elizabeth Roberts-Brawley. She's the Southern Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children at www.blogtalkradio.com/Dreamcatchers. And that's tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for an hour. I'm going to be in the chat room for sure. And tonight we had Tammy Tanko. You can pick up the archive tonight. Tammy Tanko did an awesome job, and she is an awesome advocate, and she's out there really doing the work, pounding the pavement, and helping people. So you want to check the show out, the Dreamcatchers Talk Radio. And, have a great night, everybody. Just take care of yourselves. And, I sure hope that you have a good night. We'll be seeing you tomorrow morning. I'll be back on 6 o'clock in the morning. One child abuse survivor to another. And take care. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.